Hey guys, I think I did it again. This is a recording that we did in December. And so Melanie, really sorry that somehow I lost this in the podcast recordings that we have, but super interesting episode. Melanie MacInnes, thank you for being patient with us. And I apologize that we lost this, but super interesting. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks.
Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Benucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry to keep you waiting. We just finished another recording, and then I'm moving a little slow. So,
Well, 2 minutes is not anything that I would call late.
no, we like to be on time if we can.
Yeah, we had a 15-minute recording that took 32.
Mhm.
Oh.
The one with the guy we all just talked too much.
Yeah.
So
So are they
that's
only
okay, there's content.
are they 15-minute interviews or?
It's supposed to be this one, the one we're going to do today.
Yeah.
Like a podcast is typically 45 to an hour
Mhm.
because it's a greater story. We want to know about you and the company,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah.
And then we also do on YouTube 15, 20 minuters that we'll do with like people like you, like brands, etc., that maybe are doing something cool or new after we've talked to them in the past. You got new distribution, you're going Canada wide, whatever, things like that. Or we'll bring on quasi experts like us, and we'll have discussions on, what's going on today. Like we were talking about the grocery code of conduct, and we were talking about, just grocery in general.
Our session today was called the Grumpy Couch because with this guy, that's what we do. We get grouchy, and we grouse about all the things that are wrong in the world, in the retail world. So
Nice.
yeah, it was pretty fun actually. Always pretty fun with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It is nice to meet you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't think you got to meet
No.
on
I've never
the
met Melanie
food and beverage night, right?
Right.
I think I grabbed you, Melanie, because you were talking to somebody.
Yeah. Maybe we met too. Well, we did. I also did your planning session with you did the annual planning session.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean,
right.
I was at the tail end of it, but then
Yeah.
I watched it, so I felt like I was there.
So you have met Phil.
Yeah.
But I think what it was, because I mean, what I like, because we're both the same. What we both love is, I think I can't remember who you're talking to, but I obviously got wind of it that it was local and it was a craft brewery. And we don't do a lot of stuff on that side. Most of our stuff is true CPG, like, cookie crackers, for lack of a better, that type of thing. And then when I heard you talking, I thought, shit, I'm going to interrupt because I don't know, she seems really nice, local, cool category. We're going to have this one on because we really don't talk about things like this. So I thought it'd be just kind of interesting to get.
We spent so much time in the snack and plant-based aisle in the last year. I feel like that
last 2 years probably, Phil.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we're, one of the things that we want to do on this podcast is to make sure that we're covering, amazing retail all the way around, right? So we've had some apparel folks on this year. So we've had a whole bunch of folks on, but it was what was interesting to us too was to be able to get you on because you do something. I think it's an emerging market that, well, it's not emerging now. Now I think it's a market, but I think there are just some amazing players in there. You're one of them, and so to be able to hear from you, we thought would be really cool. So
yeah. And how does this work? Is this is it already started, or do you start it, or?
Oh yeah. It
started recording.
We try and get the recording weirdness out of the way, so we hit record right away. Doesn't mean everything makes it, but it certainly means that by the time we really hit just conversation, you kind of warmed up and everyone has a chance to get to know each other, right? So we keep, usually we keep funny, goofy stuff, and then I think we've had a couple of moments where somebody had kind of a rough morning and needed to express themselves, and so sometimes we don't include those things, right? Like,
For the most part, we usually do, because honestly, because a lot of people don't have, like, a lot of times we're their first podcast. Even this well late into the world of podcasting, a lot of people they're scared to do it or whatever, right? So we try to just, because the whole podcast is like this. This is it. That's why we hit record. But by the time you figure out you're recording, it's too late. So you're already you go with it, right? So it's all good.
Cool. Well, no, I'm stoked to be here. I do think we have a unique story to tell that is different than the usual craft beer kind of location. So I'm excited to talk about that and the farming side of things. And you talked about a plant-based. We have a really cool thing, collab that we've done that we're coming up with. And so some unique stories for sure.
So what we'll do with you, Melanie, is this. The next 45, 60 is yours. Love to know a bit about you. And if you've had the partners involved in this or whatever, but your story, how you got here, why you got here, because that's typically what people love to hear, because people are scared to make decisions or need sometimes someone else to have done it and say, well, if she did it, maybe I can do it. That type of thing. And I really liked the fact that it wasn't just a craft brewery. When I interrupted your conversation that night, it was about, there's some farming elements around it. There were some very interesting things that I personally had never heard within sort of that runway.
Yeah.
That's why I thought, I think she'd be really cool to have on to talk about your business. So, I mean, really, the next 45, 60 is yours. Start where you want. We'll butt in when we butt in, because we're good at that.
All right. Well, I just propped up my computer with 4 awesome beers here, which I'm kind of regretting because I want to show it to you. But let me just see if I can find something different to prop my computer up with here. Oh, books. Books are better for propping up the computer than beer. I wanted to get beer in your hands so you could have a beer during this podcast, but as we all know, time goes fast. And
it's like everything. Yeah, I mean, we met in early October, and it feels like last week.
I know. It's been just rushing by time.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I just have our signature honey lager, which is 100% from our farm. Wow. So the cool thing about that is usually people buy ingredients from all over the world, and that's like typical. Whereas we, for a lot of our beer, we either grow the ingredients on the property or use local farms within BC. Then we malt that barley and then brew. So we truly have like that field to glass. It's very unusual to have a malt house at a brewery during this time and age. Back in the day when beer first was discovered, it would have all been local ingredients, your local water, like ours comes from the well on the property as well. So if you're truly looking for like a 1 kilometer beer, if you drink it here, that's what you're going to get. So that's kind of a cool concept. I guess if like you want to hear the story of why we have a brewery here out in Langley on a farm.
I think all of it.
I think we want to know all of it.
It's a bit of the story. So I grew up on this farm. It's a 100-acre farm. We were a dairy farm. So I grew up with, we had cows and we had pigs and we had the whole shebang. And my dad was working full-time on the farm, off the farm. And we got to experience farm life and helping out on the farm. Around 92, when the free trade agreement was coming in, my parents were worried about that that the government might get rid of the quota system, which basically allows it really, well, my opinion from being a dairy farmer is it really helps regulate like that the cows you're not being forced into overproduction, because it's not a race to the bottom. So you're not like there's a certain amount of milk that Canadians require, and there's a certain amount of dairy farms that have a quota to meet that expectation, and it just stops an oversupply of milk, which then that creates a lot of problems, right? So you can farm in a healthier way. It also just seemed like if they got rid of it, they would be even more of a struggle because it never was easy anyway. So they sold the cows in quota, and I was about 12 at the time. And then we had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with the farm? Like, how do we keep the family farm? It's just like the cliche Hallmark movies, like what do we do now? So every dinner table conversation was like, what do we do next? So we saw there was a program that you could plant cottonwood trees, and they were the next big crop at the time because you could use those cottonwood trees for toilet paper. And they take 10 years to grow the hybrids. We planted them, 36 acres. They're supposed to be hybrids, so no fluff or anything, just magic trees. On the 9th year, the Scott paper mill shut down. So we had 36 acres of cottonwood trees and no one to sell the trees to. As well, they did produce ample fluff. So we had fluff everywhere, like snowing in summer.
Yeah, people must have loved it. Your whole neighborhood just loved it.
They just loved it. They constantly thank us for that.
Yeah, I bet they did.
So we needed to start a brewery so we could drink. No, that's the short story. But the longer story is after that, we were back to the drawing board. We had also started horse boarding. So we had quite a few horses boarding on the property. And we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now? At that time, you may have heard of the movie or the series of movies called Scary Movie 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So they were scouting a location for Scary Movie 4. And they flew over our cottonwood trees and they thought, that looks just like the movie The Village. So they came and asked, can we build a little village to mock the movie The Village for this Scary Movie 4. And we were like really like, oh my goodness, how can we hold on to this? Like we'd been through the 80s interest rates and then the 90 recession, like it was just always been hard. And then we were like, yes, this is going to be great. So they filmed Scary Movie 4. Everything went well. At the end, they said, hey, do you want to keep those buildings, like some of these buildings, like maybe some student films could use them? And we're like, yeah, like that could be kind of neat. So from there, we did get a couple more films. So we had one called Beyond Sherwood Forest, which was Peter DeLuise. So like Dom DeLuise's son, Peter DeLuise was on 21 Jump Street. He was the producer, director of it. And with him, he brought these cowboys because there was lots of horses. It was like a Robin Hood type movie. And these cowboys, we quite got along with them. And they were like, hey, you should move these buildings and build like a Western town. And we were like, well, yeah, we're willing to do anything, like build it and they'll come. So we moved all the buildings and built a Western town. And it was like this pretty basic, but like
saloon and the
the saloon.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Sheriff's office,
Eastwood, the whole bit. I got it.
Cafe,
I follow you.
Church, of course. Actually, the church came after. That's another story. So we built it, and we were like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to solve all our problems. This is going to be amazing." And then producers and directors would come out, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, this property is great. The forest, da da da. But if you could like move that town, this would be perfect." And we're like, oh no.
What are you talking about? Move the town.
Well, because the town's in the way of the woods.
Yeah. And we were like, we did the wrong thing. We shouldn't have built the town. So we were really kind of like stressing. In the meantime, in parallel universe, not Universal, Universal Studios.
Close enough. Yeah.
In a parallel universe, there was a show that was there was Michael Landon Jr. So Michael Landon produced Little House on the Prairie. So his son and a producer named Brian Bird they were directing and producing a show called When Calls the Heart in Alberta. And they were partway through finishing that. And then the 2008 recession happened. And all of a sudden they couldn't pay the bills and things kind of got shut down. And they had to leave Canada. And they had this partly filmed movie, which is like the worst thing ever because you've already put so much money and stuff into it. From their producer named Brad Cravoy. He's a producer of like Dumb and Dumber. And if you watch like Netflix and stuff, any movie that's like looks like Hallmark, but it's not Hallmark, it's usually Brad Cravoy. So he said, hey, I'll help you produce this. We're going to go to Romania, finish this up. They grabbed Lori Loughlin, another whole story chain. And they finished the prequel, what became the prequel, The Wind Calls the Heart. And then when they showed the prequel to Hallmark, and then Hallmark said, we'd love to take this show and produce this. So they were trying to find a location. They had many fall through. And we were kind of here on the farm going, oh my goodness, how do we like get rid of this town? And my brother sent out a tweet to Brian Bird because he'd kind of pieced things together that there was a show looking for a town maybe like ours. Sure enough, he got Michael Lennon Jr. and Brian Bird out. They looked at the property, they looked at the town, and they were like, yep, let's pull the trigger. This is perfect. So we were kind of in disbelief about that. But it was kind of like any new series. Like it could be like 4 episodes and it just doesn't get picked up. But it now just finished season 11. So probably going into season 12.
And all the filming on the, not all the film, but like a
95%. So the first year and second year, there was a tiny bit of filming in Victoria and a little bit in Squamish, but since then they've never left the property.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so they've been filming. And in that meantime, that kind of gave us some breath to kind of be like, okay, now what do we do? So as a family, my husband's Australian, and we moved to Australia for a bit, and we were trying to like figure out like the farm. I don't know if you grew up on a farm or if you have connections to farm. Okay. The only other likening I can think of is, you know, those like stock people that like jump off buildings when the stock market crashes.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the farm feels. It feels like you can't lose a family farm. Like it's an irrational thing. That's why they make movies about it. And and you do feel like it's like there's nothing more important in the world. There's like an elevation of importance. This is me trying to come to terms with the psychological side of it.
How's it working for you?
Yes, tough. So in 2016, we were well underway with The Wind Calls the Heart. We were still like horse boarding. We're haying and doing quite a lot of farming still on the farm. And then it was a little past 2016. So 2016, my husband and I thought, okay, when we were traveling in Australia we saw a lot of like wineries and field to table restaurants that people could be like surrounded by the ingredients that they're eating or drinking. And there's this like connection to ingredients. When you go to most breweries, there's a disconnect, right? And people think hops is the main ingredients. They don't understand that water is the number one, and then barley, and then hops is just a little bit of bittering or flavor or aroma. So we really wanted something like a winery, but for beer, where people could see those ingredients and connect and ask about this. So, you know, you go to a winery, you're like, oh, what kind of soil is that? You know, like people are really interested in, oh, what's this year like? What's the change? But with beer, it's like more consistency. It's like, you know, oh, my beer tastes different this time. Something's wrong. But it's like, that's a quality perception. That's a whole nother side thing.
Right.
So we wanted something more like a single origin malt where you could actually taste the difference of the year to year, the season to season, the honey that changes from different times of the year. When you harvest that honey changes our honey lager very slightly, but you know, like there is a lot of variation in wildflower honey. So we kind of started with, okay, well, let's see if we can grow the ingredients. So we planted a 1/4 acre of hops, and we planted an acre of malting barley. And then to our surprise, they both grew. And we even got a hop harvest on the first year, and that went into the fresh hop beer for Faculty Brewing. And then the barley was the surprising part, because everyone said you can't grow malt quality malt in BC. That's like a prairie thing. And so it grew and it did its thing. And then we were like, oh my goodness, now what do we do? How do we harvest this? So we were like, okay, you either have to buy really expensive farm equipment or you like hand scythe it. So we went to all the different hardware stores trying to find scythes, Can
you still buy scythes?
No, they don't. Or they do now.
You do for Halloween, maybe, and they're not real.
But that's not going to cut the field.
Yeah.
No, so we looked everywhere for these scythes. We found some sickles, learned all these terms. But then we're like, well, where would have scythes? Like, I know in like 100 years ago, that was the thing that people.
You got to go to old farms. You got to go up to 100 Mile or into Grand Forks, or you got to find.
Or the BC Farm Museum. So the BC Farm Museum's located in Fort Langley. So we wandered over there. I don't know if anyone's been there, but there's a two-headed little cow when you first walk in. If you went in your childhood, you would very well know that cow, and it's still there. And we walked in there and we're like, okay, maybe we can find some sort of equipment here. And this fellow named Wally comes out, and he's like literally out of the woodwork. And he's like, hey, what can I help you with? And we're like, well, we planted an acre of barley and we now need to harvest it. And we can't buy like all the farm equipment because we just need to see if it actually like hits malt specs. And he's like, wow, come. And we follow him over. And there's these beautiful wooden scythes with their thing on the wall from like 1890. And Wally grabs these off the wall and hands them to us. And he's like, here you go. And then he proceeds to show us how to do it. And we're like, all right. So Andrew, my husband, and I went and we hand scythed an acre of barley. And then you have to like tie it together, and then loaded the hay wagon. Well, first you make stooks and then you do the hay wagon thing. And then we're like, okay, well, how do we separate this? So we actually thrashed the barley with the kids' like little pool. And then we did if you see in like Africa, there's sometimes those big things that you throw up in the air, and then there's the wind. So we put a fan and we were throwing this up in the air to kind of clean the barley.
Yeah, you separate.
So after all that, we're like, well, this still there's a good chance this isn't going to be hit specs. So we sent that in, and it hit the specs perfectly. It actually had low proteins, which is ideal for beer, and just beautiful. So the next step was malting. So my husband, Andrew, took a malting course. He went to the States, and then he's a mechanical engineer. So he ended up building a half-ton malt house. That's a long story short. And from there, now we could, how did we then continue to harvest and grow more? So after that, we planted more and more, and we needed then, of course, more equipment. The farm museum had this beautiful 1930s thrashing machine, but we couldn't get it working. The belts were really expensive, but we found a replica in Alberta. So my dad and Andrew went across the Rocky Mountains, picked up this beautiful 1930s thrashing machine and drove it back over the Rocky Mountains. And then, to this day, we use that to do our thrashing. So we still work with the farm museum, and we so we now have a cutter, and then we bind it and stuke it. And then we do a community thrashing bee, which is really fun because people get to get involved with their.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Nobody's done before. Yeah.
You should come out.
So cool.
I highly recommend it. So then after that, it was kind of like, now we're spending all this money and time into farming, and we still are working full time, and you can't sell malted barley for enough to pay for all that. So we're like, well, now we need to vertically integrate and actually create this brewery. So from the 2016 point to, we got right up to 2019 into 2000, we started the company 2019 in December. We still had to get all our permits and stuff, and right into the heart of COVID. So but we were so deep. We just were like, we just have to carry on here. The cool part was, I don't know if you've probably heard of the Barley Merchant. It's a awesome restaurant in Langley, owned by a fellow named Tim, that he's also known as a craft beer tourist online through Instagram. And he was in the midst of trying to open this restaurant, and then COVID hit. So he would come over and we'd go over there and we'd just talk and cry and laugh and talk about how crazy it all was. So we kind of, I think, helped each other through that really like tough part. And at that point, we're like, both of us were like, we're in too deep. We just got to do this. So in 2020, they opened 1 month prior to us, and then we opened. So that was really cool. And they've been a strong supporter of us ever since. So definitely wanted to give a shout out there, because he supplies all local brews, which is incredible. And it's a lot of sourcing, and it's a lot of work. And so I really appreciate that. So we opened in 2020, and we were just worried no one was going to come, and people started coming. And the beer, we also hired a girl named Karen. She is she went to school for biochemistry at UBC, graduated there. Then she went to Olds University, which is in Alberta, which has a little bit more on the malting side as well. And then she graduated through the brewing program there. She then went to Central City, worked there for a bit, then went to Steamworks. And honestly, like when she came to the interview, it took me everything not to just be like, you're hired. So I had to act cool. I'm like, cool. Yeah. She came with like SOPs written and everything. And I was just like shaking. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, that looks good. Yep. We'll give you a call.
Yeah, I would suggest doing this differently.
With her own standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like you hire those people. I'm just getting to know you, but I can tell you that anyone gives Kenny and I a standard operating procedure, and the two of us are like, you're in, because we don't want to do that, right? Like,
yeah, it's like having someone come with already knowing that they're gonna, like, since she started, she does her thing. Like, it's not, she's just been incredible. And then since then we've hired an assistant brewer named Emily. So she came from the KPU program, another awesome brewing program. And so she's amazing beers out there, including the beer I was going to drink this morning, which is a chai espresso milk stout. Right?
Oh shit, that's really good.
I know, it is really good. I'll get it to you at some point.
Wow.
No, you save it. We're gonna come out and thrash some.
When we come out, Phil will be out probably early spring
for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Come to the thrashing bee. We also do hop picking. One of the best activities out there, because you sit at a table with this like magical smelling plant and pick the hops and drink beer and talk around a table. It's like back in the day, you realize like, oh, that is kind of the connection a lot of us are missing. Like just being around that preparation, that harvesting, part of that, like the literally the field.
I think we're missing that in all food production these days.
Yeah. I
think it doesn't matter whether it's beer, whether it's wine, whether it's cheese, meat, just growing vegetables in general. Like I think I think this is why we get into the pickle we get into, is when you lose touch with those functions, which are important, obviously, because we have to eat.
100%.
You get what we got.
Yeah. And people don't realize that what goes into it. Like even one can of beer is not just a can of beer. It comes from a land. So I'm Métis, from like Saskatchewan was the original home of my mom's side of the family. And the Métis are very connected to land. Right. And really, I think that's a human need that we just have separated ourselves from. But I think that connection to the land is vital to go really deep, the ongoing like survival of the human race.
No, but I don't think you'd get much argument out of us, or probably most people, We've been trying to have more discussions like this, even on the podcast, whether it's fisheries, farming, meat preparation, like slaughterhouse, like we've had hop caught on, same idea, right? It's trying to bring things back into the hood.
Yeah.
Not everything things so detached. I am kind of amazed though. Like I honestly didn't think we'd be able to grow barley in the Lower Mainland because I just figured it'd be too wet.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea what requires barley, but in my head, I think prairies, and I'm thinking just flat, long days, not a lot of rain, not like the shit we get. I mean, we rain, man. Like it's been raining all night.
On that note, though, because I think there's so many things in your story that, like, I'm a little sick, so it's almost overwhelming the number of questions I have for you. But like, how do you? Because you're dairy farmers to begin with, and then you moved into kind of like set location sort of stuff.
Trees first.
Which I didn't understand. The tree one is weird, but yeah.
No. I actually understand it in a way, right? Because it's a little bit of crop. It's like
just
prospect,
exactly
right. It's like
it's a fiber crop versus a food crop.
Yeah.
But still, that's a diversion because that's not 15 minutes of growth, 1 season, 3-month window.
No, that was the idea of that was 35 acres of the 100 acres is, well, to be honest, to break it, I'm also a geographer, so I like to break things down in a map. 35 acres cottonwood trees, 36 acres is old growth forest and ravines and unusable farmland, but beautiful biodiversity part of the land. And then probably about 15 acres of building, and then the rest available pasture. Or not, it was pasture, now it's barley and hops and market garden.
It's a neat. I don't know if it's neat. I think I would have an ulcer and probably not survive it, right? But it's almost like you've got a plant and then wait.
You wait.
I mean, I wouldn't lie. I don't want to lie. Like I do Google sometimes, like how do I survive this? How do you do this? I'm like, how do I
am I nuts, right? Like, yeah. I get it.
Well, it's funny, and there's an obvious connection between, I mean, not to get down this path, but sort of religion and farming, because it's so much out of your hands. There's no kidding. Everybody's praying all the time because, like, really, man, you are at the beck and call of nature. Like, like you can't plan shit. I mean, how do you know the season's going to be? You don't know.
No, we've planted and then had to replant 2 weeks later. We've lost because we farm in more of a permaculture style. There is like
some stability.
Yeah, and you may lose something, and then something else does really well in that weather. Even like invasive species such as like knotweed and stuff, which is not great. The bees actually thrive on that.
Exactly. So there is nature figures it out. The problem is nature takes sometimes just a couple weeks longer than you have.
Couple weeks longer.
Or years.
Yeah, and especially if it's more monocrop, like you could potentially lose that whole thing. It's definitely not it's a different way of looking at things. So there's capitalism, and then there's I think the way things probably need to move is more indigenomics, which is more that reciprocal relationship. So we have to look at relationships from the land, relationships with each other. And that's really hard because we've gone off on so deep one way. And I think as society, we have to get pulled back, and it's a different way of living, and it's hard to try to balance that when the world is still very much one way.
But you're trying to erase 300 years of sort of what we've been doing. This is going back 300-400 years. This is the way it used to be. You are now trying to, and I think people are interested in getting back though. Yeah,
I think they are. They don't, it's hard to know
how to do it.
Yeah. And then I think ego is hard too, because as you said about Mother Earth, like it's very humbling. There's a strength there that we're nothing, which I find I love being reminded that I'm like just a speck, because my ego often can become more like even the farm, like I have to save this farm. I'm like, but do I like?
Why is it my job to save the farm?
Yeah,
right?
I think Mother Earth can save like
Mother Earth will figure it out. She has in the past.
Yeah.
She's been around for billions and billions of years. She'll figure it out.
Yeah. So
and if anything, she's just agitated with us right now.
Exactly. And I think it's the finding purpose versus ego, which is I'm constantly grappling with. Like also what's best overall. The patience is the hardest thing. That's kind of been like a word that's been whispered constantly through this whole process. It's a whole nother level of patience. I have come to terms with the idea of losing the farm, but that's only like, that's a government side of things.
Right.
When we had pressure with the film set, the ALR changed the rules that you could only do 10 days of filming on farmland, which basically would have cost the production of When Calls the Heart, which we needed the money to continue doing what we did. So we had to show them how we were spending all our money on farming, because I guess there's this thing where farmers can't actually thrive. They have to just barely survive. So we did the big farm plan. We actually got unanimous support through the council for the township of Langley. They've been great. And the ALR said, okay, we're going to give you approval for this farm, but we need $300,000 irrevocable letter of credit. And the reason I'm saying that is because that pisses me off.
It should piss you off.
The SEBAs are getting pulled back. And meanwhile, I have 300,000 that we can't even, like, people come here and they're like, oh, you should get some matching furniture and make it all beautiful. And I'm like, yes.
Yes, we should.
We need money. So my husband and I, there's also a whole mental health side of farming. Like, it's lonely. It's the isolated, like kids growing up on farms, it's quite isolating. So we were in Fort Langley. Luckily we'd bought a house before a bit of a jump in the real estate prices. But I loved it. My kids could walk to school. We could easily get to the farm and do our work, and we weren't drowning, because I feel like part of being on the farm is you wake up and you're just like, there's so much to do.
Well, it's all farm all day, every day.
Every day, and you can't separate anything.
No.
So I quite like the balance. I love the fact my kids could go over to the neighbors and have a community. And then we had to make that tough decision to sell our house and put that money into a irrevocable letter of credit that we may or may never get back. It's tied up, and we lost this amazing community. We still get to see them, but my kids now play more. Like, you'd think farm life, oh, they're running around and stuff. Not when you're 13 and 14.
There's no interest in running around on anything.
No, and they yes, they can do some things they can drive. Like, oh my goodness, they've been driving since they were 3. They can drive any farm equipment. They've got some amazing talents, but they're not, out there in the rain every day going, oh my goodness, look at all this land for me to play on.
Yeah.
They want kids. Kids want kids. And
sure.
In these type of areas, there isn't a place to meet. And that is also part of the brewery, because I grew up kind of like, luckily there was friends about 1.5 kilometers away from me, so we could meet halfway and stuff. But my kids don't even have that here. But with the brewery, I thought, okay, maybe I can start to meet the community and the families around here, because we used to have Coghlan Hall too. We'd have dances and stuff. And yeah, sure enough, we've met lots of our neighbors. They come out to do the hop harvest. There's not many kids around here. But like, from a community side of things, our neighbors come out here and they just love it, because they have somewhere they can go to and find community in this kind of rural area. So like, it's all, there's days when if it was just a matter of a button to like make it all go away, that would be scary, because there's times when
that button would have been pushed.
Yeah, because it's so hard to actually then get the family together and actually all decide to do something like that. But we're so ingrained in it. But because the ALR kind of put us through that, I went to their offices, I cried to them, and I tried to explain all this to them. And most of them had never even stepped foot on the farm.
So my point is, you know what though? You got bureaucrats who've never been on a farm.
They'd never been on a farm. And then they had all these, well, you should plant potatoes and do this. And
Plant
anyway, it was so hard that I finally came to terms, like, instead of, I don't think I'd be one of those people now that would jump off the building if we lost the farm. But I'll tell you what I would do. I'd go to Hawaii and let everyone else figure out everything with food. And I would just sit there on the beach all day.
Sitting on the beach all day. It's kind of sad. The reason we were late with you, we got on to our fast thought with our buddy, and we were sort of talking about that. We were talking about the CBA, and we were talking about loan paybacks, and we were talking about the massive amount of assistance at times government will give to large corporations, and or talking about the stupid grocery conduct bullshit or whatever bullshit bureaucrats think's important. I have no clue that it's not important.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things to fix. And we were talking about, like, whether it's the Buy BC programs or the Buy Albertas or whatever, like all those sort of more community-faced government programs where they're sometimes a little difficult to get. The funding's not massive. We'll put more funding into that shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is the stuff that builds communities, builds schools, builds families, builds connections. It's not large corporations like bringing in Aldi from Europe to solve our grocery woes, and then the money goes back to Europe, or building, we were saying, a Volkswagen plant in Ontario that who gives a shit?
Yeah.
It's a $5 billion investment for a German company that's going to employ a couple thousand people.
Yeah.
Well, we could employ a couple thousand people just on farms in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah.
Who would support tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. So there's like multiple things in terms of like for the brewery. If you're a distillery or cidery, if you grow, I think it's 50% of the ingredients, you don't pay a certain, like this weekly excise tax that we pay. It's a huge, quite significant. That doesn't count for breweries on farmland.
But how does that make any sense?
It doesn't make any sense because we use so much local barley, and that helps with if the ALR is going to there's a whole thing. Like, I love the fact that land is preserved for 100%. The future of farming. 100%. But if you get rid of all that knowledge and the farmers, then good luck farming that land. Well, that is where we're in this crisis mode where one of my sons is obsessed with the farm. So in that way, that is good. But I don't know. I don't wish that burden upon the next generation trying to get through this. That is all you're doing is doing paperwork, taxes, and and trying to figure out how to keep enough money in there to keep the farm going. And there's a disconnect even between the cost of food versus the cost of living. Like, we're so disproportionate to what is important to our livelihoods and disconnected there. And it's like we had those floods, and for a moment there we could see, okay, food security is important. But then, a year later, everyone forgets.
We forgot.
Yeah. And even the Buy BC, I've applied for that I'm allowed to use the thing, but I've never been granted the marketing. And meanwhile, other breweries that I can't imagine anyone using more local ingredients than us, but I'm not a grant writer, I'm not, now I have Chat GPT, I guess, but prior to that, I can't write in a way that maybe someone who has an expensive marketing person that can apply and get these grants. We applied to get money to help with the malting. Another brewery I won't name got the grant that then didn't know how to do one, and they just lost that grant, just disappeared. And meanwhile we had the whole thing ready to go. But different people have more money or more skills maybe to apply for these grants.
But I think this is where government really needs to get their shit together. You create these programs, which conceptually are quite wonderful, and that's good. But then you get bogged down into stupidity.
Yeah.
Because you get people who have no clue of the industries or things that they're working on. They have no clue on how any of it works, right? And won't spend the time to potentially go learn it, or for whatever fears they all have, right?
Yeah.
And then, like we said, then we give money to people who don't need the money.
Yeah.
Or can't use the money. Or should never have bought the money because they already have too much money.
Yeah. It's very disheartening when you do spend that time to apply for some of these more lengthy ones, and then you don't get it. It's fine if you don't get it, but then you see the people that get it.
Yeah, and you're thinking, why?
Yeah.
upsetting.
Another thing I've learned recently is between the ALR, because that's a provincial governed, and it actually kind of has its like even the Minister of Agriculture can't really just like dictate what it does. It's its own entity with a very like specific keep farmland for the future of farming, and that's its mandate. So that's really all it cares about. The Minister of Agriculture is provincial, and then you've got your townships and that. And one thing that's interesting, like for Langley Township, we're 75-80% ALR. But ALR, there is a reduction in taxes if you farm that land. So the municipalities are actually kind of, I guess, hindered by having more farmland in their municipalities.
For sure. They're handcuffed because you guys don't put enough. So the schools, the hospitals, like who's doing all this?
Yes. So then if the ALR is, and all this is all required, there needs to be subsidy, or I don't know, some sort of communication there between the province and the municipalities that are predominantly ALR. And I don't know how that works. But you're talking about food security. So there's a price tag there, but from a municipality point of view, they don't see it like that because it's not food security for that municipality, it's food security for BC.
Exactly.
Like, just because we grow it in Langley, it's like, oh, only we Langley get to eat it. So
plus, what happens? You and Langley are paying for most of it, and the township makes sense because they're thinking, guys, we have roads, we have sewers, we have schools, we have hospitals, we have police, we have tons of things we need to pay for. If you're going to subsidize this, which we should, just we're all very clear, this is important, and the ALR conceptually is very important, but you got to do things sensical and in 2024, and really and truly, this is a provincial and federal issue, not a municipal.
Yeah.
And it's not even on provincial, it's a federal issue.
Yeah.
We're talking about feeding our country.
Yeah.
And then if we have excess, feeding every country.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different level. And you got to get bureaucrats who actually understand these industries to be a part of them, not just because they handcuff you to death.
Yeah. And I used to think there was a bit more, I put more burden on the township. But seeing it from that perspective, I realized they're also in a tough position because you have to there's still money that you have a finite amount of money that you have to spend. And if the taxes aren't coming in, they're kind of stuck of what they can do to help as well. And what they need to do, like development wise, or where they need to focus their money. So I think needs to be some really hardcore conversations around that, and around food production and where we need to go with this. And then there's a more philosophical, like obviously shift that we all need to make.
I think we're slowly getting there, Melanie, because we always, because it gets very hard because sometimes I think we get so far into the ditch, you just don't see the light anymore. But I think as humans, I think for the most part, I think there is light. And we are talking more about it. Like even on these goofy little podcasts like ours, the more people we have on like you, and we've had others on talking about fishing and farming. We've got someone talking about indigenous fishing up in the North Island coming on next month. Same ideas about talking, like seriously, try and get back to Mother Earth, try to figure this out, but in today's 2024 world. Yeah. And how does this look and how does regulations work around it? But I think if we're talking about it, that at least starts the it helps. You can't, otherwise we're not going to talk because none of us care anymore. It's just we give up.
I also think that just bringing folks like you on, because I don't think both of us are city mice, right? So we don't really know. We don't know. So we can talk a good game, but we don't know, right? Like we don't know. We don't know what any of this stuff means. I could probably figure out how to drive a tractor, and that's about it, right? You don't want me around any sharp tools like that. Like I'm pretty handy in a carpentry situation, but I'm pretty sure I could.
I've used a saw. I've used a sickle.
Nice.
I have not.
I've done that.
That's not a usual thing to use.
Like at Halloween, I've carried a sigh, and that's about it. So, so you kind of like hearing your experience too, and then hearing what you have to resort to kind of think about what it takes to hang on to things, right? Could I we don't have a lot of time left. Somehow the hour went like
I know it went really fast.
Yeah, it went really, really quick. Do you mind telling it, like, so the beer that you have, Locality Brewing, where do you sell it? Like, where can people get it? Like,
you want to talk about the beer?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, we
I also want to show you this one. This is we made this. We have a Métis festival at our brewery. It'll probably be in May or June this year. And this was says Saskatoon and Kelp Ghosts.
wow.
But you can get our beer, of course, at the brewery. So Locality Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get it at we're at the restaurant Salmon and Bannock. And if you're going on an international flight, you can also get it in the airport at Salmon and Bannock on the fly. Yeah, we're at Craft right now, downtown. We're at the Pleasant, on Main Street or Commercial. And yeah, and then we're Barley Merchant has been incredible at supporting us. So our honey lager is always on tap there, and then sometimes another one of our beers. We are at some of the tap houses and some awesome places in Fort Langley like Saba and Omni and Beatniks. Then also we've now hit up Victoria. So the Churchill's been very supportive. Smith's, the Drake. We're trying to get into the liquor stores. We're in the Cascadia liquor store in Langford. We're in the Christmas calendar there. We're trying to get in more there. And then we're at Angry Otter on 248 and some liquor stores around Langley.
But not provincial liquor stores. You're spec beer still, right?
What's that?
You're a spec product. You're not in BC liquor stores. You're in like the Jacks, etc. Like
we're in both.
In both, okay.
But it's private distribution, so the liquors, the government ones that want us just ask us and we bring it. Yeah. So, but we're at Legacy Liquor Store in.
Okay. So you've got some. Okay. So broader distribution.
Yeah.
But you're doing food service. It sounds like too, quite a bit of food service, which is like the tap houses and bars and restaurants, which is. It's good and a little tough on them because you can only go to one location to buy the beer and yada 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 yada. All those stupid rules. Oh, we lost Melanie.
Well, when she comes back, it's too fast.
That was a really quick.
And then so many amazing things. We haven't talked about the filming.
We barely talked about the beer.
The beer. I mean, to think about like just just to think about like this idea that they decided we're gonna plant this and like to wait a season is one thing, and then to wait like 9 years for cotton trees. Like
that's the one
that's like so surprising, right? Like
that's the one that blew my mind a little bit. I'm thinking, okay, I can understand the barley and the hops because you got lucky in the hops. The first season you could do stuff, and the barley it sounds like they could have too. But I mean, I think we're both pretty clear. You're not planting a tree, and next week you're using the tree.
But even the barley, or is it? I don't know which one. But you know, to go against convention.
I didn't think barley would grow here.
Right, exactly. But this is my point, right? Is everyone would have said to them, "Are you crazy? Like it doesn't grow here."
But that's why we need farmers. That's because they try different things.
Like
because you know what, like a conventional institutional industrial farm isn't going to do any of this. Like none of it, because they know that the odds are lower. So why bother? But if you don't get people like this to try different things,
but someone who's already worried about like losing the farm,
I know,
and then takes the time to like actually try this stuff is amazing to me.
It would have been easier just to put the for sale sign up.
100%. Yeah.
Right, and you probably could have got out whatever and just moved on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is what I'm hoping, though. Like, it's not just talking to Melanie; it's talking to a bunch of people like this. Is I'm hoping. I mean, we're not going to go back to the 1600s, and we don't want to. But I'm hoping there are more younger people who potentially do look at. I'm not going to call it craft farming because that sounds hokey, but small scale
farming, whatever that looks like, right? Whatever
it is in called that.
We need it, right?
Yeah,
like,
badly.
Yeah.
badly.
Yeah.
Like even Hopcott, when they were doing, their own slaughterhouse instead of a Cargill or something like that,
Yeah.
and these small farms that are growing just cool stuff, the brewery on the farm. And please, government, let's use our heads a little bit here, right? Really?
Yeah.
Let's help out. We don't handcuff large corporations nearly as much as we do small, because large corporations have 6,000 people to do the shit to get it to work. These people are on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why do you sit there in government offices and make it brutally difficult?
I just think there's an interactive piece. You almost hope that, whether it's us or somebody else, somebody listens to some of these things and realizes, like, I got to get out of the office. Like, I got to go see some of this stuff, right? Like,
but maybe they're just told not to.
No, I don't think so. You think so? I don't think so.
You tell me what the reason is then.
It
can't be just lack of a desire.
No. I think that when you get office jobs, I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, when you got into London Drugs, you'd already been in the store, so
I came from the stores, but I never left the stores.
You knew what was happening in stores, right? But when you work in bigger places, you don't, right? Hey, Melanie.
Hi. I don't know why. Sorry,
that's
I don't
okay.
know.
Don't sweat us. We were talking. We were talking anyway.
We were just remarking at how remarkable your story is.
No, seriously, and we were saying it was funny. We barely talked. Like, we could talk to you for about 4 hours, because I think it's just really fascinating. I guess what we were both finishing with was, a couple things. 2, greater society. We really need to get back to supporting our small scale home sort of farming, not this institutional shit on all levels. I don't care if it's in animal kill or if it's in growing trees or growing fruit. I don't give a shit what it is. We need to really get away from all this institutional or industrial size and really get back to focusing on sort of the community, and it's actually good for the community, period. And then we were also saying, we need to get people off their asses in offices who've never been to a farm, who've never stepped on a pile of manure, or, whatever, like held a sickle. Like, just do something. Get out of the office and at least appreciate it. So instead of sitting there making it massively difficult for us to try to do the right thing because we have buried down in government bullshit, is help us. Like, this is important. It really is. This world is, like, Mother Nature's just not happy with us right now. I mean, it's pretty evident she's really not massively thrilled with us. So
I was saying to Kenny that I think the problem with people who work in offices is when you get into those jobs and you forget who your constituents are. Do you know what I mean? Like,
maybe you never understood them.
No. Yeah. Well, no. But I think that's 100% true. Like, the analogy I was making was, Kenny has worked at London Drugs for a long time, but he came from a store. So when he went to head office, he knew the impact of what he was suggesting for a store, right? Because he came from there. So he received the orders at one point and thought, what fucking idiot gave me this? And then you realize later, oh, that's why he gives that order, or that's why they ask us to do this, because that's the impact at head office. But I also think that the flip side is true, is if you go into it and you're a bureaucrat and you start as a bureaucrat, you don't know. Like, I think everything's the same. It's kind of like bankers, right? Bankers, like, we've moved away from an entire institution because they're like, can you guys come in and sign things together? And we're like, my wife and I don't have enough time together. You think that we can organize a time to come in and sign papers together? Like, the other bank will do things online. I can do it on the fly through a call or a share screen. I got to come in and make an appointment, line up and wait. I don't think so. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
bend a little bit for us, guys.
I guess I was hoping that as we share these stories and other people share these stories, like, what would thrill me a lot is if somebody called you and said, listen, I don't get what happens on a farm. I'm in charge of this series of paperwork and I have no clue what happens on a farm.
I've never been to a farm.
Could I please come see? You know what I mean? Like, could I please come see a farm, right? I feel like you wouldn't go, no, you know what? You can
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally.
Yeah.
I do think it's that getting to the farm and seeing how, and that is what some of these like kind of mixed farms that have the option to have public and some agritourism, those are what those these farms are for, is like creating that connection and that understanding. I think you also, Kenny, you touched on like what I think is possibly a solution is like decentralization of processing of food. We don't have enough small processing.
We don't have any small processors, really.
Yes,
I hate to say it,
exactly.
so absolutely, we really don't.
No, and that goes for meat production, that goes for grain production. That is
Doesn't
why
matter.
we created the malt house, because otherwise you're shipping it so far and then buying it, like it just
It's
gets
ridiculous.
crazy. Yeah,
It's the
which
Canadian
kind
way.
of that is
Take it
what
out of there, send it
undermines.
to Asia, bring it back.
Yeah. So I do think that's huge, and it's that understanding. It takes a long time. Like right now, we have our mayor in at the township, and the great thing that he's been doing is just also talking real and explaining some of the issues that they have, and that helps with the understanding instead of it just being a black box that you don't know why things aren't moving the way they are, and also being able to figure out how to navigate some of this stuff. Like instead of trying to say no, it's like, oh, this won't work, but this could work. Trying to find solutions to a path forward. So when we were first trying to open, we were getting a lot of just plain old, nope, oh no, you can't do that. And it's like, we didn't know, we only had to word something differently or say something slightly differently, and then we would have got through. It shouldn't be like the government shouldn't be there to say no. It should be there to show us the path to be able to do things within the way that they know needs.
It's their role. We pay them to help us. Yes, I know sometimes no is a legit answer. No, you cannot do that. But as opposed to just saying that and walking away because you've done your little job, you can't do that, but you could try this, this, and this. And then let's explore. Like, help us. That's what you're getting paid. Like, I think we just lost this concept. It's a service industry. You're there to service like us. That's the role. It's a support institution, not a spot to get no's. No's we can get everywhere. Give me a million no's, but give me a couple options to work around the no. That's all I'm asking. I'm okay for that.
When Kenny and I were looking for podcast funding, we probably, I don't know how many folks we talked to, and there was literally one person who was actually willing to talk to us and offered us a bunch of it didn't work out,
but at least they offered help. No, you're not that.
Everyone else was like, no, sorry, you don't fit.
No, you're not radio. No,
and because a lot of it was, okay, well, you're a podcast. We're like, yes, we are. And they're like, oh, well, you're about a business, so you got to go to small business. We're like, we're not a small business where you talk about small business, so doesn't that put us in the arts category? No, not really. You're a business. We're like, so you go to the business, they go, well, no, you're an art.
Why are you here? You're not a business.
You're broadcasting. You're talking about. You're like, but the.
Maybe you guys should get on the phone with each other and figure it out before you get to us.
We'll just figure it out. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thanks so much. Right? And that's
And then in traditional Canadian style, we stop. You know why? Because we just got roadblocked. And you're thinking, I don't have time. And there's not enough hours in a life.
There isn't.
For me to try to explain your job to you. Like, for crying out loud, just help me out here. I'm not asking you to reinvent the wheel. I'm not asking you to shut down society. I'm just asking, okay, I can't do this. I get it. What can I do?
Yeah.
What do you think I could do? Like, give me something, man.
Yeah.
And
I have, like, since we started, we've had some more people help, or starting to give more solutions, which is huge.
Awesome.
And I know there's still a long way to go. At the beginning, it felt surmountable.
No, it's just daunting, right?
Yeah, that's daunting.
Anyway, you were a treat to have on. I'm really thank you because I'm glad I interrupted your conversation at the event because that was
me too.
Fun. That was good.
Thank you. I love it.
If people want to be able to find you, where do they go? Where do they find you?
And or the brewery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So localitybrewing.ca is our website. And if you come to our brewery right now for winter, we're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 12 till dusk. For this weekend is the last weekend, or next weekend's the last weekend, where we're doing Locality After Dark on the Fridays and Saturday with some music and games and stuff. And then winter, it'll be again that Thursday to Sunday. And then summer, we're open 7 days a week. It's a real blast.
Awesome.
Kids don't want to leave our place. There's a slide that's fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I recommend coming out, but also go to the restaurants that I mentioned. Definitely check out Salmon and Bannock if you haven't, because it's just unreal. You make sure to make a reservation because it is a smaller space. If you're going international travel, do check out their on the fly Salmon and Bannock. And Barley Merchant has over 50 different taps, and we're on there. But also just awesome craft brews, because that's the thing. Like, he supports all local and curates that list, and it's changing every week. So if you really want to go somewhere where you kind of get to try it all, and ciders and whiskeys now, mainland whiskey and roots and wings. So
Awesome.
that would be my recommendation.
Awesome.
Melanie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, you can go. Phil, you stick around. Melanie, we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you in the spring when he comes down for CHFA.
Yes.
Bye, Melanie.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Bye.
Happy holiday. Okay. Hey.
Very cool, buddy.
Cool.
Very cool. Yeah, like that. I love those stories. Love those stories.